Ladies and gentlemen, a deep and dream-filled slumber. A Fool's Guide to the Arabian Nights. Part 2. Staying one head of the game. But before I go any further, the listener needs to be aware that these tales were originally designed for an all-male, relatively uneducated audience with limited scope for intellectual reflection. To be told in Cairo tea-room dives and hookah joints, and I say this not disparagingly but explicably, for they were but creatures of their time, who knew their place in a world in which socio-political correctness and terminological exactitudes were either a thing of the future or the language of politicians or angels. And though they might believe they lived among politicians and angels and demons, only the demons seemed to be hanging out in these tea-house dives and hookah joints with any forceful intent. All the politicians off somewhere correcting everybody else's politics. All the angels off knitting woolly jumpers to keep them warm should their hell finally freeze over, leaving them free to indulge all their debasest stereotypes, misogynistic or otherwise, banded about with disturbing implications of feminine inferiority. Women were either lascivious and devious enchantresses or pious, prudent, and relatively undramatic romantic sops, as they still are in most soap operas to this day. On the other hand, in A Fool's Defence, these tales are in premise fact spun by a woman, an enchantress of a particularly sophisticated, civilized, and ingeniously civilizing sort. She would give the customer what he thought he wanted, while at the same time evolving aspects of his behaviour she thought might really need some work on. She was no nymphomaniac popping up out of a glass case, but an artful subverter of iniquitously absurd and barbaric cultural anachronisms, like chopping your wife's head off to ensure she remains faithful. Where does sexual inhibition end and personal freedom begin? As the prophet said, hell is mostly populated by women, and paradise is under the heels of mothers. Gives a man something to really look forward to. Is it any wonder men need to get their rocks off while they're still alive, and women need to learn how to maintain their balance on ever-shifting sands and misogynistic prophecies? Especially when you're under the threats of imminent decapitation by a king who had a nasty habit of smoking after sex. She wondered if he smoked after decapitations too. Sex and violence do both demand that the lungs should pay a price for such physical and psychological exertions. All that exhaustion needs to be internalized, need a manifest mediation between finger and lips to savour too much sweetness with a bitterness of breath to bring the body back down to earth and relax any lingering rapture. Though what could possibly be so sweet and rapturous about chopping somebody's head off seemed beyond her feminine grasp. Maybe she should try it next time and see, though for her it might be too late. She might never have sex or get her head chopped off again, but she put such thoughts out of a story for now. As King Shira lay back, he settled back on the pillow with his ciggy, then blew a perfect smoke ring which rose up to the ceiling, lingered for a few moments, and dispersed in a puff of smoke. He looked at her, she looked at him. So tell me about the salesman and the old devil, will you? Scheherazade withheld an impertinent, unroyal cough and began clearing her throat. Once upon a time, she said, once upon a time there was a salesman who'd gotten very rich selling things. He was the kind of man who could sell 50 acres of the Sahara Desert to a dairy farmer. Anyway, one day he's on his way home after another successful business trip. He stops for a rest, as he regularly did, in this abandoned orchard a few miles from his village. Settles down on a tree stump to nibble on his packed lunch of dates and pineapple links as he ponders his latest profits. when suddenly this tornado of dust swirls up and whirls towards him. And when the dust settles at his feet, there's a giant demon looming over him, in a long grey cloak this time, and wielding a great silver sword, thundering, "My name is Sammy Stumblebum. You murdered my son. Now you must die, villain." Wait a minute," cried the salesman. "Have we met before? I don't even know your son. I've never met your son, Sam. And if he looks anything like you, I'm sure I'd remember." The demon pointed a free finger towards what looked like a small hillock. "Over there, my dear son was taking a quiet nap, not demonizing anybody, choked on a date pit that you cast aside so willy-nilly." "Well, I didn't know that was your son. I thought it was just a small hillock. But if that's what happened, I swear on my life it was an accident, a tragic event, but an accident nonetheless." The demon remained unappeased. "Still, you must die. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth," he explained. "It is the great demonic principle, crime and punishment, pride and prejudice, the decline and fall of the Roman Empire." "Okay, I get the gist," said the salesman. "But let's calm down for a minute, shall we, both of us? I've read Dostoevsky, so I know you have a point, but I swear this really was an accident. And I do have a wife and family to think of, and my servants and slaves. Come on, D, man. Mitigating circumstances and all that, no homicidal intent. Even Lucifer himself must allow his constitution a little indigestion. By now, he's diplomatically down on his knees. I beg you, great demon, if you'll just let me say goodbye to my wife and family, settle my affairs." He's wringing his hands, pleading for mercy. But many years of successful salesmanship had ingrained in him the capacity to market and mask any privately snivelling fear and cowardice or deceit as brave, defiant and noble loyalty and integrity that must inspire compassion and seal any deal, even with demons. I swear on my life, you have my word as a salesman. I will return to this place whenever you say. Just give me a few weeks. Then the devil can have his due. Fair enough. Do we have a deal?" The demon hesitated, still somewhat confounded by that previous remark about Lucifer's constitution. Okay, Sam relented. "I'll give you 3 weeks, to the day, 11 a.m. on the dot. Otherwise, I will personally come and kiss your wife a long goodbye. I know where you live." Was that a lie, or was it a threat? Who knows? With demons, that they truly exist at all is a threat, even if we believe it's a lie, and vice versa. "You're a very reasonable demon," said the salesman, as they shook a hand and a pinky finger on it. Then he mounted his ass and burrowed off like the devil, as fast as his ass could carry him, feeling very relieved, though not quite sure what he should feel relieved about. He knew he'd be dead in 3 weeks. He would have to return, if only for his wife's sake. It was the devil's own business. "So he wasn't that bad a demon," interjected King Shura. "Just very upset about losing his son." Scheherazade looks at him, he looks at her. She begs leave to take a bathroom break. The king royally assents. Thinks twice about lighting another cigarette. Shura lays his head back on the pillow and pondering as much on the demon's dilemma as the salesman's. Even the devil had some right to justice. Even if it was an accident, carelessness must have its consequences. Can't go unpunished. Was the salesman lying? Could you trust anybody you knew was trying to sell you something? Was he just buying time to make other arrangements? He was rich. He could hire a small army to go take care of that demon. But can you kill demons? The son of Sam must have been a demon, must have had the devil in his blood. Was his death any real loss to the world? And that demon on the beach, he was a fool, in love with a foolish dream. How devilish is that? Which one of them deserved to die, the dreaming fool demon, or the faithless, treacherous angel? Shura was a king. He was no fool. He could have sent his army to kill that demon, kill them both, but somehow that thought had never entered his mind. Why are demons always larger than life, he thought, and angels just normal-sized demons in disguise? You couldn't trust angels any more than demons. Maybe it was his job as king to kill them all off, the demons and the angels, everybody who can't be trusted to really be what they appear to be. In his experience, demons seemed a lot less likely to disguise their devilry. It was very confusing. This girl, Scheherazade, was she angel or demon? How can you trust anybody who tells you stories? Was she making all this up, or was the salesman really her father? But the vizier was her father. His vizier, though he could have been a salesman before he became his vizier, he should run a background check. Of course, if he was once the salesman, then he was obviously not killed by the demon. Spoiler alert. So he put that right out of his mind, because this wasn't his story. The only way to fight devilry is with devilry. Maybe she was the devil's spawn. The salesman reneged on the deal, escaped off to another country, left his wife to face the demon's wrath and bear the demon's seed. Can a man, or a woman, for that matter, or even an angel, become demonized by lascivious interaction with the devil, whether knowingly or not? So what is she doing in there in the bathroom? She was enjoying the privacy, the clean air, the silence, and considering her next movie. A little powder there, a little blush here, a faint spritz of magnolia, and an inspired moment of consequence. Scheherazade returns into the bedchamber, all glowing and ravishingly refreshed. She looked like an angel, but so had his wife, thought Shura. So had that ravishing beauty who popped out of the glass case. The king was becoming very confused. He really needed some help with this. Nobody had ever told him stories before. The only story he knew was his own. He really needed to know what happened next. So many questions. So he closed his eyes, and the king determinedly stopped pondering and awaited some answers as Scheherazade slipped in between the covers, curled onto his side, and feigned a deep, deep, deep slumber. She figured not even a king could rouse, and feminine wiles be blessed, he didn't. Did not a wise husband once say, "Futility thy name is trying to rouse a wife in deep, deep dream-filled slumber"? Strangely enough, he wasn't shocked. He wasn't stunned. And even curiouser, he wasn't furious. That shocked him. Then he laughed out loud, which shocked him even more. So the king was left to his pondering. Ponderous is as ponderous must, till he decided he really needed to sleep and save some of his pondering for what could be a very ponderous day ahead. So he took a sedative, fell into a deep but dreamless slumber. At least in the morning he couldn't remember anything but his waking ponderousness and his need to know what happened next. So he didn't chop Scheherazade's head off. He spent the whole day hunting wildlife in the local forest, took his mind off pondering too much. Then that night, after the obligatory ravishing to ease his royal tumescence, Scheherazade resumed her story to tell him unponderously what really happened next. She had a whole day to think it through. See next week that fateful rendezvous with his demonic nemesis turns into something the salesman had never expected. And he wasn't the only one.